Hi, I'm Benny Green, and I rock jazz. Playing with Art Blakey was my life's dream come true. I first heard Art live at the Keystone Corner in 1978. James Williams was his pianist at the time. And I'd been listening to the Messengers records for years already, since childhood. But as soon as I saw the band live, and I saw the connection that Art and James had with the eye contact and just the energy being exchanged, I knew that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be up there playing with Art. And it catalyzed my moving back to New York, where I was born, from the San Francisco Bay Area, where I grew up in the 70s. So I moved back to New York in the spring of 1982 when I was 19. And the first venue that I got to hear the Messengers at in New York was a club which has since closed called the Jazz Forum, which was a loft on Broadway and Bleecker. And Art lived around the corner in a building called the Bleecker Courts. And the band would play there often when they were in town. And one thing that I first noticed when I came to hear them in New York was the personnel had completely changed, actually other than the bassist with Art, Charles Fambrough at the time, from the previous incarnation. The last time I heard the band in San Francisco before I moved, the personnel was Wynton Marsalis and Branford Marsalis, Billy Pierce, Donald Brown, and Charles Fambrough with Art. So when I came to New York and heard the band, I was expecting to hear the same group. And this time it was very young Terrence Blanchard playing trumpet, Donald Harrison on saxophone, Billy Pierce was still playing tenor, a wonderful pianist who I didn't know of at the time named Johnny O'Neill, and Charles Fambrough. And these guys were taking care of business. And that really made a strong impression on me that it was Art that was central, of course, to the feeling of the band, but he had an ever-shifting, rotating personnel of Messengers. And of course, Art is the core of the group. I made it my mission to groom myself to become a jazz messenger, to learn their repertoire and stay abreast as the band's book expanded. And the time I first got to sit in with Art was at the Blue Note it was either January or February of 1983. And I was prepared in that I knew all their tunes. I was pretty green in terms of experience, but I did know the repertoire. So knowing the repertoire served me well in that moment, because the tune that Art called was called Miss B.C., written by Bobby Watson's wife, Pamela, for Betty Carter. And it was recorded by the Messengers on an album called Album of the Year in 1980. So if I hadn't been practicing all the Messengers tunes, I would have gotten kicked off the bandstand right then and there. But I knew it, and I certainly was not on the level of the other players on the bandstand in terms of my experience, my projection. But I could handle the tune because I knew it. And Art was very encouraging to me that evening after I played. He said, "Keep doing what you're doing. I'm going to need you one day." And that's all I needed to hear. Betty Carter heard me just a couple months later, and she hired me, and I worked and toured with Betty for 4 years, which was a tremendous experience for me, playing in every key and every tempo. Finally, Art invited me to join the band in April of 1987. And I thought at that time that I had some experience after playing with Betty and traveling with her, but once I began playing with Art, it felt like I was starting again from scratch. It was such a different situation. With Art, one really had to project their sound, or he would just swallow you up. And Art brought such dynamics to the music. He would give shape to your solo, and you really had to ride that and kind of stay ahead of him, or else, as I said, you'd just be swallowed up by this tidal wave of power. So he helped us, everyone in the band, to develop our voices. And So much of me being here today, I owe directly to Art for everything he gave me. He helps you find yourself. If you have the goods, if you can handle it. If you can't, he'll just destroy you. So it's sink or swim with Art, very much so. He encouraged us to write music for the band, and now I'm performing almost exclusively originals in my programs. And with Art, he would say, when you write a tune and you bring it in, you won't even recognize it after a couple months. And he was right, because what he would do with the song, he would give it such life and such feeling, and it would take shape as an extension of your original conception. But he would make a lady of it, you know? And so having that experience with Art, has taught me a lot also about writing music and writing for a particular band, and then allowing it, really in keeping with the whole spirit of jazz, of improvisation and spontaneity and interpretation, that the song is going to take shape and develop beyond what I originally conceived while I was writing it. So there are ways that I actually allow for that in how I write. I sometimes keep things in a sense rather spare, knowing that it's going to develop as it goes along. Art, following on the heels of the Betty Carter experience, did a lot to instill in me a certain kind of work ethic that no matter how fatigued we are, or if you had an argument on the phone long distance with your girlfriend before the show, what have you, if you're feeling a little sick, you didn't eat well that day, whatever it is, you leave that off the bandstand and you're there to serve the music, deliver the music for the audience. And he really embodied that, and just being around him taught me so much in that regard. Art's feeling as a drummer was so powerful. He just made you feel like you were flying, and he somehow caused me and the other people in the band to feel that we had so much power while we were playing. In fact, it was him, it was what he was putting behind us that made us feel that way. Because when I would go and play with any other drummer, it would feel like the bottom dropped out. You'd be like, hey, what happened? And then I realized how much of what I was feeling on the bandstand was Art just lifting me up. And that's something that I feel the real great jazz musicians had. When I was on stage with Ray Brown or Milt Jackson or Oscar Peterson, I got that same kind of feeling. It's magic with them. And so that's something that I want to really strive to carry on if I can. No one is on their level. Those guys are giants. But it's something I'm reaching for as a player, that if I'm playing in a group, there's a certain kind of energy and attitude that I'm going to bring with consistency that makes the other cats really feel like playing.